Hey guys, last 3 weeks, which is crazy to think about. Well, kind of four if you include final stuff, but um, yeah, just crazy. So we're finally moving on, putting Jekyll and Hyde behind us, and really going into our last unit, which is the Great Divorce, with Leaf by Niggle as one of those little wayside ends tacked on there. So I put the journey of life map that we've had in the classroom up on the screen so you guys can kind of get a visual of where we are. We're at Leaf by Niggle. We'll do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then that flows in so well into the Great Divorce, which will be our last full length text. So I'm really excited. I think Leaf by Niggle, the Great Divorce, The Hobbit, and probably Ecclesiastes are my favorite texts of the year. So we get to do two of them back to back. Oh, and Princess and the Goblin. Shoot, there's so many good ones. Anyway, these two flow together really well. So I think it'll be a really powerful ending to the year. So anyway, Leaf by Niggle. Y'all will be watching this before you read because I think it'll give you some perspective on things to look for, maybe an idea of how to interpret the story, because it's definitely a layered text. So I titled this lecture "Leaf by Niggle: Artwork in the Backcountry," because those are three things that Tolkien really focuses on in this text. So for starters, I wanted to bring us back to the definition of Sehnsucht. Remember, it's a German word. It means longing, right? And we talked about it a lot with The Princess and the Goblin, because George MacDonald was like, that's what everything he wrote about was about the Sehnsucht. And remember, C.S. Lewis, the way he defined Sehnsucht was an inconsolable longing for something more, right? And inconsolable means you can't fill it, right? It's always present, for something more, right? And then another way to put it is a longing for the back country. I heard that definition. I thought it was a really good one. If you have a beautiful painting like the one on the screen, it's that longing to get to the mountains, right? Because if only I could get to the mountains, then I'd be happy. Then I'd be satisfied. Um, so it's difficult to pin down like a clean definition, but it's that hole in the human heart where you're like, man, there's a piece missing. Where if only I could fill it, I'd be completely whole, right? Or I'd be home, or I'd be completely satisfied, right? And it's actually what we saw in Ecclesiastes, right? Where Koheleth felt that, right? He was like, I'm not satisfied. Where's my meaning? A longing for meaning could be another way to put it. And Koheleth kept trying to grab at everything, right? Money, sex, pleasure, all the different things, right? And he came to the conclusion that it's meaningless, right? It's Hevel, because nothing can quite fill that hole on this side of eternity. Um, so some great quotes from some of the things that we've looked at to maybe give us a better picture of designs of. C.S. Lewis called it that unnameable something, desire for which pierces us like a rapier. Right? And he said he felt it when he'd see ducks flying west, and he was like, oh, I want to be there. Right? I want to be there. Or he said it when he felt or smelled a bonfire. Right? And it's just there. It comes at random moments. You're just like, there's more. Right? We saw in The Hobbit with this great quote when Bilbo has his dream right before he goes on his journey. And Tolkien says, but all night he dreamed of his own house and wandered in his sleep into all his different rooms, looking for something that he could not find nor remember what it looked like. Right? It's that's the Sehnsucht. It's looking for that one thing that is going to completely satisfy, to get into the back of the picture, to get home. George MacDonald, the best author, in my mind, one of the best authors ever, but especially when writing about the Sehnsucht, he says something more than the sun, something greater than the light is coming. It's coming, right? It's that anticipation that, oh, it's coming, right? The morning when I'll know fully. And then another one George MacDonald said was, where was the lock to which the key belonged? It must be somewhere, for how could anybody make a key for which there was no lock? Right? And we went back, there was a great quote by C.S. Lewis where he said, if I find within myself a desire for which nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. Right? If there's a key, which is this internal longing that we cannot necessarily name or pinpoint, then there has to be a lock, right? For every key, there's a lock. Um, and so Leaf by Niggle is going to focus a lot on this. It's going to focus a lot on this deep desire to know fully, to know completely, to be satisfied, to see the backcountry, right? To satisfy the spiritual homesickness. So I really want us focusing on the Sehnsucht, and again, it takes sort of a spiritual fertility to be able to feel that, right? Because it's more of a feeling and less of a knowledge. But if you're intuitive to it, it's definitely there. Another thing that we'll really look at is what Tolkien called sub-creation, right? And this has to do with the Sehnsucht, so they kind of flow together. But Tolkien said that as artists and as creators, right? If you're a writer, if you're an artist, if you're just a thinker, whatever it is, that we really don't create anything new, right? In Ecclesiastes, it says, there really is nothing new under the sun. And he's right. Essentially, what we do is we reflect and we reconfigure, we reform using already existing materials, and we create new things, right? And so I want to go back to this diagram that we've looked at all year, right? The life, language, and story diagram. And just remind us of a couple things, right? We have life at the top right here as the objective reality, right? And that funnels into art and story, right? So everything that we create is a sub-creation, right? It's a reflection, a kaleidoscopic reflection. Sorry, I just choked on my own saliva. It's a kaleidoscopic reflection of the objective reality, right? So life provides that material for art and story. Art and story then in turn helps us to interpret and understand the objective reality, right? Because we can't see the full picture. And that's why over here we said that life is really, it's the full picture or the light. And then art and story serves as a kaleidoscope, right? Because we can't see the full light. We can't fully escape the cave, as we talked about with Plato. And so we use art and story to get glimpses of it, right? When you see the light of a kaleidoscope, it's 1,000 different colors and hues and shapes. And it's all coming from that one light, right? But we just get glimpses of it, distorted images of it. And it's helping us to interpret the fact, which is the objective reality, right? The objective truth. And so the first thing that I really want us to look at as we get into Leaf by Niggle, especially in the first half of the story, is it talks a lot about Niggle's leaf, right? So I put that down here as one of the interpretations of the light, right? Niggle is this painter. He has this idea of this. He's really good at drawing leaves, right? And he has this idea of this incredible painting he wants to do, which is the full picture, right? The objective reality. But all he can seem to do is a leaf. He's like, man, I can get this leaf down perfectly, and that makes me think of mountains, and makes me think of some more, and that it makes me think of a tree, and then a stream, and then the backcountry, right? But he's like, but I can't quite get all that stuff right, but I can get this leaf. And really, that is the state that we all find ourselves in, right? Is that we want to know fully. We want to completely understand the way things are. We have that missing puzzle piece, that Sehnsucht, that longing to know fully. But really, all that we get are glimpses. We get glimpses that help us to understand the things that we can't see, right? The full picture. And that's what we talked about with the cover of The Princess and the Goblin, right? You have Princess Irene who lives, we said, life in the mist, right? There's that diagram that we had where we're like halfway up a mountain. And at the very peak is where we desire to be. It's the home. It's the other place. It's the Holy Land. But it's a misty mountain, right? And so we get glimpses of it periodically when the mist clears, and then the mist comes back together. And it's actually in 1 Corinthians where Paul says, now we see through a mirror dimly, then we shall see face to face and know fully, right? And so that's the state we all find ourselves in, is this life in the mist, right? And it's exactly what Niggle's experiencing, where he has this grand vision. He's like, if only I could paint this one picture, I'd be complete, I'd be satisfied. but all he can get is the leaf, right? But the leaf is drawing him out. It's that longing, right, to get the full picture. So really look for that. I want you guys to really hone into the Sehnsucht that Niggle feels, right? The glimpses that he gets of the full picture, even though he can't nail it down. Secondly, the other thing that I want you guys to notice is in this first half of Leaf by Niggle is the tension between life's necessities and sub-creation, right? So life's necessities and art is another way to put it. In Tolkien, this story is very autobiographical, but he felt this tension between like the things he had to do, right? Grocery shop, support his family, do things like that, versus his art and what he wanted to do, writing Lord of the Rings, writing his whole mythology, etc. And so I call it the Niggle Parish spectrum, right? Because Parish is his neighbor, as we'll see. And we all lie somewhere on this spectrum, right? We have Niggle, who is the dreamer, right? He's the artist. He tends to be very abstract. He's very intuitive to his feelings of longing, to the feeling of Sehnsucht. He's discontent with life as it is, right? And so the way I put it was that he lives longing for the backcountry. I see myself as sort of a Niggle character, right? That I tend to be on that end of the spectrum where pretty much constantly I'm longing for something more, and I'm just trying to catch glimpses of it, right? Through my poetry or through whatever it is you do, right? For your art, we're trying to catch glimpses of something bigger than ourselves. On the other end, we have Parrish, right? Who's his neighbor, and his neighbor doesn't care about art. He's a doer, right? He's a worker. He thinks very concretely. He's like, hey, why would you be painting this portrait, Niggle, or this backcountry when you need to take care of your garden, right? And so I think the best way to describe him is that Parrish lives working in the present here and now, right? It's the things like I can't sit and dream about the Sehnsucht because I have homework to do, right? I can't sit and like create art and just do things because there's assignments that need to be done. My parents need my help with this. I have to help raise my little siblings, right? All those things that y'all experience. And there's the tension between the two, between life's necessities, which is kind of Parrish represents, and sub-creation, the desire to create, to reflect something bigger than ourselves, which is what Niggle exemplifies. And what we're going to see as the story progresses is that both are good and both are needed, right? That we all fall somewhere in this spectrum. No one is like fully a Niggle character. No one's fully a Parrish character. We all fall somewhere on this spectrum, but both of those things are incredibly needed and incredibly necessary for the kingdom of God, right? And so we'll see that played out a little bit more in the second part of the story. But I want you guys, and you'll see in my annotations, because you have the copy that has my annotations in it, you'll see that I called the things that Parrish pays attention to laws, right? And they talk about the laws of the country, which are keep your garden in order, make sure your house is tidy, right? The things like get groceries, all the necessities of life that you need to live, and what I call art, right? Which is what Niggle's doing. And so that tension between law and art in this world of Leaf by Niggle. So as you guys get into the first half, here's what I want you guys to focus on as you're reading, kind of three things. The first one is what I just said, the tension between life's laws and art, right, or aspirations. And you can kind of think of his art and his painting, not just as art, but also just as like your dreams, right? Like the things you really want to do. Like as, hey, I want to travel the world. I want to do this, but I don't know how, like, is that concrete? Can I actually do that? How do I support a family? Right? And there's a tension between those things. So I really want you to look at that. And you'll see the law of the land, right, is that it takes precedence over art. Is that okay? Is that how it should be? Secondly, I want you guys looking for the Sehnsucht, right? I want you to look for all of the passages and the phrases that talk about approaching but not arriving. Right? I think that's maybe a good way to put it. Approaching but not arriving. It's the glimpses that Niggle gets of something greater, but not yet seeing in full, right? The glimpses he has of his great portrait, his great image that he just needs to get right, but not yet seeing it completely. Um, look for anything about that, right? About the kaleidoscope reflecting the light. And then lastly, I want you guys looking for the inescapable journey. It talks about that right at the beginning, right? There was a young man named Niggle who had a long journey to make, right? It's the journey to death. And just talk, I want you all to look for lines that talk about how to prepare or if you can prepare, um, and really how best to live in the meantime. So I know you guys have read A Leaf by Niggle once before. I think having that context would be really helpful. But we'll read the first half today, next half tomorrow, and we'll go from there. All right. Still recording. There we go. All right. Bye.